And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, July 18th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is GSMCPodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCPodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So let's get into what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the NFC West. We're going to do quarterback rankings within that division. So this will be the last NFC division that we do quarterbacks for. We covered the previous three. We'll start the AFC tomorrow. We'll do the AFC East. Then in the second part of the show, we will talk about Caleb Williams signing his rookie deal. There was an interesting note with that I wanted to get into regarding him wanting to exclude the franchise tag in his deal, but that didn't happen. So I wanted to get into that a little bit, but as my dog starts to bark. So that's the second part of the show. Third part of the show, we'll talk more about Brandon Ayuk requesting a trade from the 49ers. I'll talk about some other players where in the past they requested a trade, but they still ended up getting a new contract. So I just wanted to get into that. So that'll be the third part of the show. We'll talk about Bill Belichick again, his desire to coach in 2025. So we'll get into that. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about Josh Jacobs and some comments that he made about the Raiders as an organization. So that's the rundown for the show. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the NFC West. So, interesting division, of course. You got the 49ers, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals. You already know that. But, so these are the rankings. So we're starting at number 4, working our way. So at number 4, we got Geno Smith. You guys already know what teams were in the division, but it was buying me some time to get the rankings up. But so at number 4 I have Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been a great story. He kind of bounced around after the Jets drafted him, and he was with the Seahawks when Russell Wilson was still there. He filled in for Russ when Russ got hurt his last season in Seattle, and then that first full year without Russ, he was pretty good, and he ended up winning Comeback Player of the Year, and it's been a great story. Last year, missed some games, wasn't as good as the previous season, but the Seahawks, they still were in a position where maybe they could have made the playoffs, but fell a little bit short. But yeah, in 2022, he had 4,282 passing yards, 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Last year, 3,624 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So yeah, down from the previous season, but it's been quite a story, and I don't really know what the future holds for Geno Smith. I've kind of said in the past that I think with the acquisition of Sam Howell, I feel like at some point maybe he could end up being the starter over Geno Smith, but I could be completely wrong on that. But I think Geno still deserves to have a leg up on Howell, and he should still be the starter. So we'll see how that unfolds, and we'll see what Seattle's like this year, especially because they got a new coach. Mike McDonald came over from the Ravens. There's no more Pete Carroll, which is very strange, but that's just how it is. And Geno Smith has a great supporting cast around him. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba going into his second season, Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. It's a great supporting cast. And, I don't think it's a tough division to be in. And I think, what did I have Seattle at? I think I had him at like 7 wins when I did my schedule predictions. I think that's fair, but they could surprise us. So, but I have him at 4. It's possible, like I said, maybe Sam Howell takes over at some point. I like the other quarterbacks in the division better. That's the other thing too. So, I got Geno Smith at 4. So moving on to Kyler Murray. So I have him at 3. Now, Kyler didn't play that much last year. Came back towards the end of the season. And you know what? At times he did play well. I thought he played well. I think he's an explosive player, especially like, taking off with the football and running with it. Um, I expect him to. I think he'll put up decent numbers this season. Doesn't have the best supporting cast around him. I mean, they added a number one receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. through the draft. You still got James Conner, Trey McBride, the young tight end. He looks like he looks like he's going to become one of the best tight ends in the NFL. So, not the best supporting cast around him, but I think another year removed from the ACL tear, I think he can put up good numbers. The Cardinals, I don't think are going to be a very good team this year, but we'll see what happens. I mean, the offense, again, full season of Kyler, I think that's, something to look forward to. Maybe they win a couple more games than they did last year, and they were even competitive without Kyler. I mean, they won with Josh Dobbs at quarterback against the Cowboys early on in the season. So, Jonathan Gannon has this team, I think, heading in the right direction. So, I mean, he had that team playing hard last year. So, I think Kyler, like I said, a full season back, another year removed from the injury, I think he could put up good numbers, and we'll see. So I have him at number 3. Then at 2, I got Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford had a bounce back season last year. Not a lot of people had high expectations for the Rams going into the season. Really, I don't think really anybody knew what to expect from the Rams. Especially with how the previous year went, where Stafford got hurt, Cooper Kupp got hurt, Aaron Donald got hurt. The Rams were not a good team in 2022. I mean, even before they got hurt, they were struggling, but they bounced back. I mean, I think we kind of got put on notice a little bit in that Week 1 matchup against the Seahawks when Puka Nacua had a really good game and the Rams won that game. A lot of people had Seattle winning that. Got Cooper Kupp back, and still kind of working his way back because he started the year injured, but Stafford played really well last year, and he's what was he? I think he was like top 5, top 6 in the that top quarterbacks list. Matthew Stafford still got some good football left in him, and I think the Rams, they could definitely be a playoff team. Last year, Stafford had 24 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, just under 4,000 yards. He had 3,965 passing yards. His first season with the Rams was unbelievable. I mean, he had 41 touchdowns. I mean, the interceptions were high, 17 interceptions, but he had 41 touchdowns his first season with the Rams, and almost 5,000 yards. He had 4,886 yards. And then in 2022, of course, got hurt. He had 2,087 passing yards, 10 touchdowns to 8 picks. But now you're hoping Cooper Kupp comes into the season fully healthy. You got Puka Nacua again to try to replicate what he did last year. Kyren Williams as well. I mean, he was a force coming out of the backfield last year. And because he got hurt in the beginning of the year, and once he came back from injury, that kind of changed their season. And, they went on a run and ended up making the playoffs. So, you got to give Matthew Stafford that respect, of course. I think, obviously Stafford is kind of on the back nine, whereas Kyler Murray, he's still got some more time, some more runway with his career. But for the moment, though, I think where both teams are at, I put Stafford at 2. I think the Rams are gonna, like I said, I think they should make the playoffs once again. Despite on defense, you got Aaron Donald retiring, and that's going to be a huge impact. So we'll see how that defense responds without him, but I think Stafford should be at 2. I think he's going to have a good year. And then at number 1, I mean, it's kind of no surprise. And look, I think overall, probably you would say Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback than Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy, I got to put up 1. I think he's going to have the best season out of these guys. Now, what concerns me, though, is the Brandon Ayuk stuff, which we will talk about a little later in the show. But, I touched upon it yesterday, of course, but kind of taking a different perspective on things. But, if that Brandon Ayuk stuff doesn't get resolved and he ends up leaving, I mean, that's going to hurt this offense, and that's going to hurt Brock Purdy. But, Brock Purdy, since he's come into the league, he's played really well. And, regardless if you think he's a system quarterback or not, um, he's put up good numbers. And I think he's taken this 49ers offense to places that, the previous quarterbacks didn't. And again, you could say, well, they also got Christian McCaffrey as well. That definitely has helped, and I'm not going to argue with that because, he's the best running back in the league. But Brock Purdy has taken full advantage of his opportunity. And, if he continues down this path, he's going to get a big contract. And the 49ers love him. I know I did a segment on George Kittle talking about Brock Purdy and how he looks great. So, let's see what kind of season he puts up this year. And, if they don't have Brandon Ayuk, I mean, that's going to be a test for him. Because, you have people that criticize him, because he's got his Avengers supporting cast, and we saw last year when there was no Deebo Samuel or Trent Williams, they struggled. So, last year, 4,280 yards passing, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And he was an MVP candidate. And he helped guide his team to a Super Bowl. Again, you look at what happened in the NFC Championship game. They were down by 17 points. I mean, they could have easily folded, but they didn't. And they came back. I know there was, luck was kind of on their side at times, but you know what? Got to give them credit. They came back, and I thought Brock Purdy played well enough that they could have won the Super Bowl. I definitely think so, but it just didn't happen. So, but yeah, I think out of these guys, I think he's going to have the best year, and he's got the best supporting cast out of anybody in the division. And I think, well, like I said, I think Kyler's is probably the worst supporting cast out of, out of these teams. I don't think it's no. I think, like I said, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got James Conner, Trey McBride. Like there's pieces there, but I think if you were to look at Seattle, the Rams, and the 49ers, I mean they're better supporting cast than the Cardinals. So, but yeah, I think Brock Purdy once again gonna have a really good year. So I got him at 1. So just to kind of reiterate again, so Geno Smith 4, Kyler Murray 3. Matthew Stafford 2, Brock Purdy 1. Let me know what you guys think about those rankings. How would you have the rankings in this division? So tomorrow we'll do the AFC East, which is going to be tough, but we're going to do it. So we're going to take our first break now. When we come back, we're going to talk about Caleb Williams. We'll talk about him signing his rookie deal and a couple other things I wanted to touch upon with that as well. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.